Curselight of Mortua by J.T. Williams. Copyright 2021. Chapter 1. Wizard's Tower. "You know what this is, Troon?" Barlas asked. Troon looked up from his scroll, staring for a short moment across the bay waters. He sighed and looked back to his scroll. "Our master said to not worry of it." "I'm not worried of it," he said with a shrug. "Are you really so daft to not even care?" "It is not natural. Even the other wizards don't know what they are." Troon rolled up his scroll and smacked Barlas with it. "I know what you are saying, but he is our master and has a much deeper knowledge of all subjects arcane than either of us put together. We are students, pupils of this lone wizard, and we're not here to argue about what we do not understand. Soon, we will have completed our studies, and by then, those smarter than you and me will know what these are, and perhaps we can learn even more from them." Barlas looked across the water and to the strange object that had appeared not even a single month ago, emerging as if from nowhere on the night of a full moon, at the peak of the darkest part of the night. It was a large black crystal. Some who were awake claimed that it came with an electrifying burst of energy, and that it moved from shore to shore, before holding its position, just hovering over the water. Furthermore, other stones had appeared in the past 7 days, with at least 10 more in the region emerging across the land and at varied locations. But they were told to not concern themselves with this. Troon and Barlas were students from the Arcane Academy, spending time with one of the more reclusive wizards of the region. Master Gefral was once a Mage Guild master in a nearby town. He was much older than what most men should ever live, and he seemed to not give too much mind to what the Academy thought. Troon stood up and tucked the many scrolls he'd brought with him to read under his arm as he turned to go back to the lone redstone tower that they had resided in the past few weeks. It was an old place, once used as a watchtower for studying the stars. Now it was a depository of ancient texts guarded over by a wizard of particular regard to the students' teachers. "Have you learned anything reading all those old scrolls?" Barlas teased. "I'd say I've learned more than you. You have spent more time drawing ruins than actually any real studying under the master." As they began away from the lake shore and back up the stone road toward the tower, Barlas laughed. "This wizard does nothing outside his tower. I really don't understand why students of magic come to this man. He is a recluse for a reason. He doesn't want to teach." "So that's what you've determined from your studies here? That a master wizard who once ran the Mages Guild does not wish to teach? That is a foolish assumption." The pathway from the lake shore led up around a small hill of rock that provided the tower an elevated position to the surrounding lands. The tower itself was not a mere brick structure like some of the castles of the land. It was a sheer red stone, constructed by the ancient men in some time well before the lives of the young Trun and Barlas. It was here, on the far northwest point of the Grand Redstone Lake, from which the tower's stone was carved from, that the Master Wizard chose to live out his life. The nearest town was at least half a day's journey away, and that was by horseback. For the most part, they had been left alone in this secluded place. Since the arrival of the Pillars, there was much distrust growing between the many kingdoms. For the last 50 years, many had begun forging weapons and mustering armies, something unheard of before. Though their land was a land of peace under the one god, something was happening. But Master Gefral had told both Troon and Barlas to ignore it. "Do not concern yourself with the matters of mere mortals, for you are not mere mortals. Neither of you should worry, unless such a time comes that the troubles of the world come knocking upon your door," he would tell them. "Attend your studies. Watch the stars and the moon in the heavens in general, for many great signs will appear there." Neither of them had any doubt that the Master Wizard's teaching method was peculiar, to say the least. While they were told not to worry of the strange object hovering above the lake, It did not go unnoticed by the two pupils that the wizard was now spending much more time atop the tower, studying the heavens and in particular the paths of the stars. In fact, over the past week, he had gone deeper and deeper into the library of the tower to find them. Every type of book in regard to ancient arcane practices. This was beyond their typical studies, and he would not tell them why he was sharing this lore. He seemed to be hiding something from them, and while Barlas sensed this, Trun had constantly told him that he was overreacting. As they reached the stairwell leading up to the double doors of the tower, it seemed that perhaps the very troubles of the world had in fact come to knock. 3 men on horseback looked the 2 young mages up and down as they approached. They were knights of the realm, likely sent by the king himself to inquire as to why the wizard had been ignoring the repeated summonings posted on the door and at least 3 ravens that had flown messages to the top of the tower. "Young masters, is the great wizard here or not?" a man at the front of the knights with long brown hair said. Trun stepped forward. "Yes, sir. My master is here. He has told us he does not wish to be troubled by the mere complaints of the land." "I do respect your master," the knight said. "But I do regret to say that I have not come to simply request his assistance, but in fact, demand it. While I know he does not care for the troubles of the rest of the world, it seems the world has come to haunt us. There is great concern over the crystal hovering above the lake. In some regions, great beasts have emerged, and sudden pestilence is spreading throughout other lands. Several wizards have already been killed, and the great elven kingdom of the west has been attacked by an army of dead creatures." As he said this, the 2 other knights became unsettled, looking around back towards the crystal in great fear. "Ludicrous," said Trun. "Our master has told us that there is nothing to fear from these crystals. I can get him if you wish, but he will not simply come to you, and he will not be leaving his tower." At that moment, the door behind them opened, and out stepped the old wizard himself, Master Gefral. Immediately, the knights dismounted and knelt before the wizard. Strangely enough, he seemed to be dressed for traveling. Aside from his typical blue robe and large blue hat, he had his traveling pouch he only took when gathering herbs, as well as his staff, which, while it was normally near him, it seemed he was much more ardent than to pause to discuss anything, and instead just continued walking. "It is good to see you, knights of the realm. I have need to talk to our good king, and I will be leaving immediately to do so." This revelation shot both the pupils of the wizard and the knight. "Oh, aye," the captain said. "After talking to your pupils, I didn't suspect that you would come so easily." Master Gefral paused and turned, and then looked at both Trun and Barlas. "I suspect that is because I have found no need to go upon the world until now. I try to keep them guessing to the workings of this old wizard. Young ones do not need to know every aspect of the comings and goings of their elders. I walk my own path when I choose to walk it. It is a fallacy of our times in the realm we live in now. If you continually give in to the young and let them dictate to you what you will do or not do, or demand you do for them what you don't want to do, they will not know what they want to do when it is time for them to do something." The knights clearly did not fully get what the wizard was saying, but none of them would admit it. "Well then, master, shall we escort you?" the captain asked. "No, but if you would be so kind, I'll have you watch my pupils. Only one of you should be required, and since you've been the main person to speak with me of the 3 of you, I say it should be you." "Why, thank you, Master Wizard. However, Gefral cut him off. "You will have no issue watching the young lads, yes?" "Of course," the knight said, befuddled by his sudden charge. "Send my regards to the king. He will be in town today, actually, so you may not have to be gone as long as you might suspect." "Dear knight, I do know where my king is. I do know that I will return by tomorrow morning, no doubt. The road to town will soon be much more dangerous than they are as of now. Guard these 2 pupils with your life." I do feel it is much too dangerous with the coming shadow upon the land for the two of them to be wandering with me. They are still too new to magic. They still need training." With that, the wizard simply turned away and began walking. "So, I will be staying here with them?" the knight shouted out. Master Gefral said nothing, and it was clear that now the wizard was singing a tune as he ignored the knight's attempt to change the mind of the stalwart wizard. One of the other knights, still mounted on his horse, laughed. "So it seems. Keep watch well, sir. The men will not be happy that you're not returning tonight. A lot of them are afraid." The knight nodded to the other knight. "I will. Remember, in the event of any sign of what has befallen the other villages, light signal fires atop the tower and the Great Hall. Envoys have already gone out to all our forces, hiding in the more remote regions. We've already decided it is best to fall back and move to the interior of the realm if necessary." "We will do so, Sir Ragans." The two knights quickly departed, vanishing into the failing sunlight, leaving the two mages with their newly appointed guardian. "Shall we call you Sir Ragans?" Barlas asked. "Yes, I am of the House of Fallen Moon in the northwest portion of the realm. I was a squire, and I made knight a few years ago." "So you are from the village of Eldaya?" Troon asked. "Yes, have you been there?" "No, but exactly 123 years ago, the ruling lord of your house murdered academy wizards for trespassing upon his land." The knight was taken aback by the sudden accusation, but instead of becoming angry, he simply smirked. "You do know your history. Indeed, that event did transpire, but I will have you know that our family has grown much since and no longer slaughter children. That was no doubt a dark mark on my line, but one that has been cleaned from my soul." Troon and Barlas led the knight into the tower. Though the upper reaches of the tower itself was restricted to the wizard himself, the lower region, or the common area floor, was well suited for guests, featuring not only one large fireplace and a cooking area, but 2 beds, a large table, and a small garden that would make any apothecary happy with its vast assortment of herbs and rare flowers. Of a strange fact to the knight, no torches burned within the tower itself, but there were several glowing stones enchanted with fairy magic to give a soft glow that was enough light for most situations. "I told you there was something up with those crystals," Barlas told Troon. "Master Gefral is likely going to tell the king just that. Nothing to worry about. You keep thinking that, but clearly there is. There's a knight assigned to protect us. The wizard deems it unsafe for us to travel with him. What other time have you found our master say that?" "Indeed," Rakan said. "I know it may seem unlike your master to not explain something. For truth, the gravity of what has befallen our lands is not a pleasant reality. I can tell you with a degree of certainty there is an evil upon our doorstep. That stone is not natural. What it creates is not natural. An entire city was destroyed." Rikans nodded. "Yes, another crystal is there. It was 2 nights ago, but it began to ripple with energy and a portal opened up on the shoreline. Then, as it was reported to us, an enveloping black shroud reached out with something like the many tentacles of an octopus and grasped the outer walls that protected the villages. As this transpired, a single figure floated just above the hilltop to the west of city. Roke's Overlook? The site of the ancient battle of Chieftain Roke?" Trun asked. "It is said that his entire army perished and was buried there." "Yes, and from those dead came the warriors brought back to life and used upon the city. We only know this because one of the lowly merchant managed to escape and gave his message to our outer scouting parties. We do not know where this necromancer went, but the portal is still open, or should I say it opens at night. The king is calling all across the land to try to figure out a way to destroy them. Your master will hopefully have some plan in which to do this." This news was distressing to both Troon and Barlas, even though Barlas already suspected something malevolent of the crystal. While there was very little to offer in the form of entertainment within the tower, Troon put on a kettle of tea and led Rekins out to the balcony of the second floor. It was here that the Red Tower commanded a grand view of the lake. But now, knowing the potential evil of the crystal hovering above it, it was not such a relaxing sight. Troon poured each of them some tea, but at the moment, the knight began to tremble. He reached into his pocket and revealed he had several blue flowers with silver streaks. The tips seemed to glow. "I do not know of that flower," Troon said. "It is rare," Rekins said. "It helps when my nerves become too much. It is good for proper sleep, too." "I could use that," Troon said. "I have not been sleeping well." The Rekins crushed the flowers and sprinkled just a bit in each of their cups. "Well, I am happy to share. That works out perfectly. We all need our sleep." They each took their teas and took several sips. "Master Gefral will not get to town until nightfall. And then, if he does not sleep and simply speaks to the king immediately, he will not be back until midday tomorrow," Trent said. There was an obvious uneasiness in his voice, and to Rekins he was watching children, regardless of any magical ability they had. He felt an appropriate answer, though contrived, was best. "We are well here. I do not deny the crystal that looms so close to us. I do have a mild understanding of elven constructs. Aside from the magical abilities and the augmentation effects for those keen to use it, their structures are well built. We will be fine within the tower." "You actually know of magic?" Barlas asked. "Just a bit. It is in my family. I always joked that one of them would have to possess me to get me to use magic of any kind. I prefer a good sword." Chapter 2. Nightfall. Nightfall. With the coming of night came the lulling songs of the night birds that perched atop the tower. As a large moon rose over the surface of the lake, Troon and Barlas spent their time reading as the knight cleaned his sword. As it drew near the midnight hour, Troon and Barlas lay down, though neither of them wished to go to sleep, especially Troon, who continued to glance outside every few minutes. The knight assured them that they would do well to go to sleep. They both slept, though neither of them slept very well. It was made worse when there was a sudden knock at the tower door. It was loud and fast, and by no means some traveler seeking to ask a question. Barlas sat up just in time to see Rekins stand up, holding his sword and walking towards the door. He cracked open the door but did not speak and quickly walked outside. He closed the door as he went out. Barlas threw one of the nearby scrolls at Troon. "You didn't hear the knock." Troon quickly sat up and looked around sleepily. "Is the master back?" "No, there's no way he has returned so quickly." They both jumped out of bed, going out to the balcony where, while they could not actually see the front gate where the knight went, they could hear any conversation. But they did not hear anything. Even the night birds had gone silent. Even the air was still, when normally winds blew across the surface of the lake. They looked toward the strange object above the lake, but it did nothing. They then heard a sudden clamor, but then nothing. No shout, no cry, just silence. Behind them, they heard the sound of the doors closing. They went back into the room just as the knight emerged back up at the second level. He seemed to be sweating, but nothing else. "Who was it?" Troon asked. "A lost traveler," he said plainly. "I did not mean to wake you, little masters. Now go back to sleep. You are well guarded, do not worry." He smiled above them as he sat back down on a chair and returned to the smoking pipe he left smoldering. "Hey," Barlas said, "you are not supposed to smoke in here." "Go to bed, young master. Such trivial rules, such as smoking inside the tower, are very small. Now, lay down. You want to keep your strength up, and sleep is key." The knight smiled and nodded towards them. Both Trun and Barlas lay down as instructed, but Barlas had difficulty going to sleep. The knight was staring at them, not to mention the smell of smoke was quite strong and a bit distracting. Barlas closed his eyes and tried to cover his face with a blanket enough to where his intended peeks out toward the knight would not be so noticeable. It was strange to him the knight was still sweating, though from the sounds of Trun snoring, his friend did not notice this. It was peculiar that this knight not only did not seem tired, but also how he held an unblinking stare upon them. Before he realized it, Barlas had fallen asleep. In the sleep, Barlas heard a voice, but he didn't recognize it. He wasn't sure if he was dreaming or not, but he felt suddenly extremely cold. He opened his eyes and stared around, and strangely could see his breath. It seemed that there was a strange light outside, like the twilight times before dawn, but still different. He scanned the room and noticed the knight was not sitting as he was when Barlas went to sleep. Though Trun kept sleeping, Barlas carefully slipped from bed and went for his staff. Kippin stand across the room. He walked to the balcony and looked at the crystal above the lake. It was glowing. He suddenly had issues catching his breath, and he looked around but saw no strange portal as he suspected. There was nothing like the story they were told before. His first reaction was to shout something to Rikans, but he didn't. He nudged Trun, waking him, but at the same time, he put his finger to his mouth to keep him quiet. "What is it?" Trun whispered. "The crystal has activated." "Then we must tell Rikans. Where is he?" "Wait," he said. "There is something strange going on. Something is not right here." Trun jumped up and ran to the balcony. He backed away slowly and then gulped. "Okay, we both need our staves." As now Trun brandished his staff, they walked down to the lower level of the tower. They learned the knight was not there, but they could still smell his pipe smoke, and it was not just residue from earlier. "You think he went up to the master's chambers?" Trun asked. Barlas was about to check outside when he looked up towards the upper level of the tower. "Perhaps. He already stated he doesn't care for the rules. But why? I don't know. You're the one thinking something is wrong with him. But we need to find him." They returned to the second floor and then moved to the recessed stairwell and up toward the third floor. The smell of the pipe smoke was stronger here, and a strange light emanated from the doorway ahead. Both of the young mages carefully crept up the stairwell and peeked into their master's room. They had both passed through this room going up to the observatory on countless occasions, but never were they permitted to go there without him being present, much less to touch anything. The door was open. Night was standing in plain sight, but there was a strange violet glow that extended out from the night in a series of small orbs, the orbs flowing to the outer stairwell that led to the top of the tower. Trun and Barlas lowered their staves and slowly approached the knight from behind. His sword was no longer at his hip, as it was before, and in his hands he was holding a strange black book. They moved to either side of the knight and saw that he was still sweating profusely, and his arms were trembling. They kept their staves up, each focused their magic into the small crystals at the tips. As both Trun and Barlas were not at an angle to see his full face, they realized his eyes were open. He was staring outward, and the orbs they saw floating in the air and up out of the tower were coming from his eyes. As they moved to his front, he did not move. He did not stare at them, but he did seem to begin trembling more. His eyes attempted to track both of them, and he seemed to grimace in pain. "Help, Todd! Help me!" the knight moaned. Trun grabbed hold of his arm and felt a searing pain that caused him to recoil and shake his hand. Blood poured from the knight's nose. The knight's eyes began to run with tears. "Kill me." The two wizards jabbed with their staves, attempting to knock the book from his hands. Perhaps it was causing the condition he was in. As they did so, their staves bounced back as if a ward of some kind was upon the book itself. Within. It is within. Kill me. Both Troon and Barlas had been told to never use their magic for violence, not at this stage in their studies, and both of them looked at one another at the knight's request. The air became colder. It seemed the very magic upon the stones that lit the interior of the tower flickered and darkened. Where the knight was standing, the elvish stone began to darken to a deep black, and a small wisp of black smoke curled at his feet. Upon seeing this, the two wizards sprang into action, both casting spells of raw power, electrifying the knight and dropping the man to the ground. Neither of them had seen a dead person before, but the knight's death did not seem as how they had both read of death. The man instantly turned white, and his body iced over. The orbs that had been coming from his eyes seemed to recoil from atop the tower, down onto the floor, hovering just above the stones. "We should go," Trent stated. "We can go to the town or just get away from here. I don't know what any of this is, but this is something wrong. We need the Master." Barlas nodded in agreement. They both went down to the second level, quickly throwing what little belongings they had in their traveling bags, and went for the front door of the tower. As they opened the tower door, they came upon the sight of two mangled bodies lying in front of the gate. These were the knights with Rikans before. Perhaps they knew the crystal was activating? Perhaps there was some warning, and they came to tell Rikans. Now, both of them had their throats slashed and were lying lifeless with their horses dead beside them. The wizards looked over at the lake and noticed the large crystal was electrified with a beam of energy coming from the top of the elven tower. They both looked up to the stars and then at what light the moon gave out, and realized the moon was in a different phase than before. "How long were we sleeping?" Trun asked. "The moon is new." "How is the moon new? We only slept for part of a night," Barlas said. "No, the night, or whatever he was, it did something to us, or it was that stuff he put in our tea. Why would the night betray us? The darkness must have possessed him. Perhaps he did not know what he did or didn't realize. It doesn't matter, we need to get our master now." At that moment, there was a shallow scream and a cackle from within the tower. They both looked up to the top of the tower and spotted the knight they had both killed now stood on the edge of the tower's pinnacle. He was enveloped with purple magic, and it seemed he had now claimed one of the staves of their master. "I awaken that which has slept. Slowly we come upon the world from the sunken lands, bridging that of death and of life. I speak into existence that which shall reopen the portals long closed. The time has come for our rise." At that moment, the corpses before them began to tremble and twitch. Looking behind them, the crystal began to surge with power, and a black fog rolled out of it. From atop the tower, the entity that now inhabited the body of the knight leapt down and landed with the sound of shattering ice upon the ground. "Young pupils, you have studied magic of your lands. I will show you my magics, and perhaps you will find a place in the world to come. All that must be given is your soul to the embrace of my own spirit. Then you shall see with awakened eyes." Chapter 3. Portals. Both Trun and Barlas trembled, unsure of what was before them, never reading about such a thing in all the texts both in their studies before now and the wizard's texts here. Though neither of them cared much for religion, once before, a knight of the Holy Order had spoken to them, and they knew at the very least that there was such a thing as a soul within the body. The souls were an entity of life magic and something beyond them in skill. It was not something that should be given to an entity like this, regardless of their religious affiliations. The two wizards gripped their staffs tighter. They would not falter to this masters of shadow. As they held their ground, staring back with unwavering courage, The form before them seemed to relish in this fact, smiling at them, with its pale face in the darkness of the night. So foolish, those of the living. I, Master of the Dead, Necromancer of Mortua, call forth my servants. He moved his finger over the dead knights, and they both rose as if alive, their steeds reawakening with them. Barlas didn't wait for Troon. He focused his concentration and cast a short-range immolation spell at the nearest knight. The attack worked, the undead knight bursting into flames, just as the other knight was engorged with magic from the necromancer. Troon and Barlas both attempted to cast magic, but this time their spells were blocked and deflected, sending sparks and flames into the nearby trees. The necromancer summoned a ward of purple energy, pushing towards them. "Run!" Troon shouted. The two mages turned, fleeing down the road as fast as their feet would move. They could hear the galloping sound of the undead warrior chasing them. They could not run to the village, and aside from an abandoned dwarven mine off the road several hundred paces, there was no good place for them to hide. There was nowhere near for them to get assistance. They kept running, both tiring and knowing that they needed to get off the road and move to the woods. It took them closer to the lake, but at this point no place was really safe, and the two mages were doing their best just to survive. Though the undead horse and its rider were close behind them, they were able to get to the shore of the lake and throw off their pursuer for a few moments. "Is that really a necromancer? That thing that brought the dead back to life?" Tran asked. "You just answered your own question," Barlas said. "But where shall we go?" "The standing stones to the north. There is power there that can protect us. They are connected to the one god. The stones can increase our magic. At least, I hope they can." As they moved along the lake, it seemed that the crystal was shrouded in a black shadow. They looked back to where the red tower was, and though they could see the doorway at its bottom, they could no longer see the necromancer. They turned and began to run again, glancing back now to where they spotted the knight bursting through the trees and thundering toward them on his undead steed. Barlas stopped, turned around, and sent a fireball toward their pursuer. The knight dodged the attack, but a second attack from Trun struck with electrifying brilliance just in the horse's path. In an explosion of sand and wisps of shadow, the pursuer was brought down. The two young wizards moved forward, casting several volleys of fire, turning the undead warrior into a pile of burning pieces. The necromancer floated over the trees to their right and landed in the sands several paces from them. Good, my dear wizards. Truly, there is hope that some of this world can join those of us who come. Now, let me have what you have within you." The necromancer lifted his staff, and both Trun and Barlas felt a sudden sucking sensation in their center chest that reached out through their backs. "No!" Trun shouted. He pointed his staff toward the necromancer and sent another blast of electricity. Barlas cast fireball again. Neither attack phased the creature. "So, you will not offer it freely. Most in the face of fear have given up their souls to serve those of Mortua. It seems you are still foolish. Then, this is as it must be. You were given a choice, and you have failed." The necromancer lifted his own staff, sending ripples of energy out and then in toward himself. The two wizards used their waning energy to create wards around themselves as a sudden blast of purple fire threw up water, sands, and upturned trees in an eruption of power that struck their wards, shattering them on contact. The two wizards fell to the ground, recoiling at the darkness enveloping them. Then came a light, a rolling wave of brilliant power that pushed back the darkness and blinded them for a moment. "Come now, young mages, let us depart." It was Master Gefral. The old wizard ran between them with his staff held high above his head, his robes furled with winds, and it seemed the old wizard was fuller with life now than ever before. "Mane of the living, you are sealed to this place by the power of the one God, that which still remains in Vastral. While our great torches burn brightly, none of your ilk shall remain." The wizard's staff exploded with magic, appearing as the night sky of black interwoven with white, striking the necromancer in a bright light. The necromancer let out a shrill and was wrapped in golden chains. But the power of the crystal upon the lake surged with energy. "This will not hold him. The world falters, my young companions," the wizard shouted. A great flash of light came in the east. Trumpets sounded, long and hard. "A great city calls us," Gefral said. The light that was growing brighter in the east suddenly became dark. "Surely the torch has not gone out, surely?" He looked over at the necromancer. The golden chains holding him down to the ground were darkening. He pulled both of them to their feet and pointed for them to run. They fled, leaving the shoreline and coming to the standing stones near the bridge, where Trun originally wanted them to go. The wizard began arranging runes on the ground, and a small fire erupted at the base of one of the standing stones. "Do we go to the king? To his castle?" The wizard looked up at them. "The king is already dead. The realm is in shambles. That necromancer is one of many. Our world is no longer ours. We must go. We must hide. I offer the only protection I can in this darkness, for this darkness will not be defeated by the strength of our armies. Those still alive ride to rally and defend that which remains." "Where will we go?" asked Trun. The wizard tossed several red pebbles into the fire at the base of the standing stone. The fire grew over the stone, and the stone opened, as if it were a massive eye. "Water magic is a new art in our world. I take us to a place in the mountains. A place we may yet resist the coming darkness." The necromancer shot up into the air above them. The air became foul. The three of them began coughing. "Nigh is the reckoning, foolish living souls." The wizard lifted his staff, sending another blast of magic at the necromancer. The entity screamed and faltered, falling to the ground mere paces from them. He was beaten down again, but the shadows from the crystal enveloped him. "I will teach you," the wizard told Trun and Barlas. "In time, perhaps we can change what has become. For now we cannot resist this evil. Flee, flee, young wizards." The three wizards retreated through the portal and were now out of reach from the necromancer. The portal they had taken extinguished, and the necromancer joined its brethren, unleashing their horror upon the domain of men, Vazuria. But the time would come where the three of them would be called forth for the last hope any could have in the coming darkness. By then, the apprentices would no longer be the mere pupils they were now. They would need all the skill they could obtain for the coming showdown against the evils of Mortua and her undead servants. Thank you for listening to another Dwarmon Realm story. These characters appear in the already published Our Dead Gods novel, but there are additional adventures to come that take place before those events. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.